soon. On the wing of I for I socks. Little soon. On the wing. Little soon. For lock the eye. Little soon. On the wing of I for I socks. Little soon. On the wing. Little lock for lock the eye.
Hello friends and enemies, Diplomancy here. I'm going to talk about, I recently played at Weasel Moot, and I was on round 2, board 7. I ended with a 0 center Germany, and I'm going to walk through that game and go through a win and a loss from each season. We're starting in spring 1901. My win for this year is the bounce in Tyrolia. This was an unplanned bounce that I asked Austria about the viability of me moving to Tyrolia, and they didn't immediately say no, so I wrote the move to Tyrolia with the expectation that it would be bounced. It eventually became an arranged bounce once I talked to Italy, and they confirmed that they were in fact moving to Tyrolia. The loss this year was not checking the scoring system. Both my potential partners in the West, had tournament scores. I had a 0 on this tournament, and so that would have been a powerful negotiating tool in the years to come to just point that out continually. In fall 1901, my win is making it to Burgundy. I think I attempted to arrange a strong GE here, and it looks like it's being effectively prosecuted. I'm pretty excited about the game at this stage. My mistake is not bouncing Sweden. It works out well, but I think in the next couple of years, my English ally stabs me, and I think bouncing Sweden would have helped keep that alliance stable. In spring 1902, we're looking at a no-wins disaster turn for me. I looked at my moves. I couldn't find a single thing that I was really proud of. I think the worst of my moves is supporting Sweden to hold. This is like gunboat nonsense that has no place in face-to-face, like full press diplomacy. It's not acceptable to support Sweden to hold here, I don't think. In fall 1902, it turns out that my win is bouncing Sweden. Obviously, I wanted to make it in there, but that move sets England and Russia up as enemies, and that's something that I need based on the loss this year, which is failing to communicate what I have as a path forward. I have a pretty comprehensive vision of a series of moves that takes apart France and leaves me in England, moves me in England quickly to cleaning up our side of the board and then figuring out what happens next. And I sort of looked at the board, thought these moves are obvious, and so I relied on the board for diplomacy, and that's never a good choice or a good situation to be in. I have to be more explicit, be more friendly, literally talk to my allies. This has bitten me 100 times in 100 games where something that I think should go unsaid needs to be said. So spring 1903. My win is bouncing North Sea. It's not hugely impactful, but it does slow the English down quite a bit, and sort of gives a position to Russia. My loss here is not supporting Munich to Kiel. The English move, if the English moved Holland to Kiel, that's a very bad outcome for me because the army in Burgundy is popped, and I really can't risk that at this point. If that army is popped in the spring, I think my game is almost over. Fall 1903. My win is losing Munich to the board top. Russia is at 7 right now. They're growing to 8. Everybody has to be scared of them, and Munich is the center of mine that everyone else touches. And so this game, I really thought well about having Munich be a German dot that you don't necessarily own, but you have a lot of influence on who you can give it away to because you have the adjacent home centers. And I think this game I used that negotiation tool pretty effectively. The loss for fall 1903 is moving to Ruhr instead of supporting into Holland. Another player on the board told me this move, but I was still too focused on pushing west or making sure that the west didn't overtake me. But if Russia is already in Silesia and Bohemia, I can be less concerned with that. My move west is an invitation to Russia to take my dots. But if they've taken that invitation, I need to drop the westward offensive and start focusing on holding my home centers. Spring 1904, we see the win is the Aegean is decided in the east. The AI that takes it lasts for the rest of the game, so the east starts resolving quite quickly from here on, and that gives gas to the rest of my game. My loss here is failing to successfully sell myself as Russian units. That was my diplomatic tack, was Russia, don't you love having an army in Ruhr? It's beautiful. But Russia walks into Berlin. If I'm playing a Russian position here, and I believe that the German dots are acting as my dots, I would likely move Silesia to Bohemia instead. And so I think that would give me a lot of life, that would give me a lot of strength and flexibility, and it would also allow me and Russia to actually work together and be a quite powerful alliance on this board. Fall 1904. My win is getting supported into Munich. I established trust with what becomes a long-term alliance with AI. I don't love it, but it's nice to make friends. My loss is getting supported into Munich, which destabilizes Russia, makes it difficult for them to continue and help me effectively. I likely don't want to ever be in Munich in this position. So, spring 1905, we see I'm able to turn a English dot in Kiel into a French dot in Munich. And that trade, as the French-Italian conflict develops, is much better for me than having England build or be viable. I need Russia to be fighting in the north. As soon as England is able to cap off St. Pete's, my game is done. And so I need to do everything possible to slow that down and try and help the French as much as possible. My loss for this turn is not asking Prussia to go to Silesia. I think that that's a more valuable move, and even though I had stabbed the Russian the previous turn. I think the two center like small power stab is one of the most understandable in diplomacy. Nobody really gets that upset about it, and I think I could have salvaged that relationship and started working together effectively. For fall 1905, the win is the French decision to move Mar to Gascony. This allows Tyrolean to Piedmont, and it makes my negotiations for and around Munich much easier, as I only have to negotiate with Austria for several years, rather than trying to arrange a three-way conversation. The loss this year is that I start helping AI probably more than is reasonable. At this point, I've sort of lost a perfectly reasonable perspective of the game, and I'm acting out of vengeance, which is never a good place to be. And it really bites me later in the game when it's extremely important for me and England to work together, but it takes us a turn or two to figure that out, and that spells our doom. So now we're into spring 1906. The victory here is that France moves to Kiel rather than England. If England moves to Kiel, it's quite simple for them to knock me out. It should be simple for them to knock me out of Berlin no matter what, but communication problems sort of prevent that from happening. I much prefer the French to have Kiel, and so that's a pretty good outcome for me, as good as can be expected in this position. My mistake is not asking for support into Munich. An ideal set of moves is something like Berlin to Munich, and then Kiel is able to retreat to Berlin. But like I said last year, I'm focused on moving the Eastern powers forward at the expense of my own position. Fall 1906, my win is my remaining dot touches 4 powers. All 4 powers each have 1 unit on my dot. That's an amazing position to be as a 1 dot power. Nobody's going to want you. Nobody has the ability to remove you or wedge you out in this position, because nobody's going to support someone else into your dot. My loss here is I have to move. I have to be doing something. I'm a passive player in this turn, and I just end up supporting people around me. I think this is a failure of diplomacy. All right, now we're into spring 1907. This is the turn that players start very seriously talking about a draw. We have a line across Munich. We have a line down in Amao in Spain. The St. Petersburg line is going to be kept very, very shortly. And the loss is that the draw line totally falls apart as Italy is able to force the MAO. Fall 1907, ENF start fighting quite seriously, and that's the win. My loss is that I learned about the fight from the adjudication and did not do the necessary diplomacy to anticipate it better. Spring 1908. If the EF fight continues this turn, it's likely to continue for the rest of the game. And so there's no resolution between ENF, and if there hitting each other in the spring, they're definitely going to continue hitting each other in the fall. My loss is accepting English support into Kiel, which pops a potentially useful French army in the fall, and sort of removes that I'm touched by one power on all sides dynamic, which had benefited me so far. All right, fall 1908. This is the turn that people start taking the end of the game really seriously. The attitude starts coming around that if I can't be the board top, other people should have my dots. And that attitude benefits me for several years, but eventually leads to my destruction. My loss this year is not rebuilding with a fleet Berlin. I wanted to indicate cooperation to the English, which doesn't quite materialize, and I should recognize tactically that Berlin is not on the stalemate line anymore, right? The Prussia, Silesia, like Munich, with the lack of English armies on the continent, should spell doom in my mind for any army that lives in Berlin, and I should start looking much more carefully at the flexibility that Baltic Sea is going to offer me. So spring 1909, we're looking at, my win is getting English support. I think it's important at this point to try and patch up that relationship. My loss is I don't have any orders. I just hold for several turns in a row at this point. I don't have allies. Fall 1909. This turn I earned everyone's support except for France, but it feels quite good to be supported by 3 units. This is one of the benefits of having lots of people next to you, having lots of people in your home centers. You can be everyone's friend. My loss here is, again, I hold. I'm in a 1 dot position. I should be trying to go big or go home. I should be trying to get back in the game. I should be trying to build at this point, like asking for support into Kiel, those sorts of things. I think tactically it's fine. Diplomatically, I think I wasn't even asking for dots for myself at this point, and I think that's a failure. So we're moving on to spring 1910. And here, I become an extremely important stalemate member, as Austria is in Prussia, Silesia, Ruhr, Munich. All of these things are very bad for England. And I think my army is becoming very important to maintain a line. The loss in this season, spring 1910, is, again, I'm supporting meaningless things. I need to be moving or getting support for myself. I need to be less accommodating of the people who are eventually going to crush me. My fall 1910, I get to build a fleet. It's amazing. It gives me a lot of flexibility. It starts to guarantee my position in the end of the game. My loss is I sell the fleet quite effectively to Austria and Italy. That's the reason that they don't walk into Berlin. But I don't sell England on the effectiveness of this fleet very well. And I do think it would be it can be a fleet that helps England just as much as it hurts them. And I think that I did not make that clear. So we're moving on to spring 1911. Here, I make it into the Baltic, which is something I should have done many, many years ago. Now I live there. It's such a flexible space, especially in the face of a crushing AI that's coming around the corner. My loss this year is I'm fighting the English for dots that are already destined to become Austrian. There's almost no way to hold Kiel or Berlin, and me and England are fighting about them. I don't think that's a reasonable outcome. Moving on to fall 1911. This year, I remain viable by like getting into Sweden. I start to see I'm swap Berlin out for Kiel, which is important because the further away from the Austrian at this point I can be, the better it is. I need to not be on the bleeding edge of Austria anymore, even though it was such an effective place for so long. The loss this turn is, I think Denmark is a much better, more powerful move than Sweden. I was talked by Austria into moving there, and I should have just ignored that advice and moved into Denmark. Moving on to spring 1912. This year I am able to like see the end of the game very clearly. I believe that I'm going to be the last one to be eliminated, and it's a whim. You take what you can get. My loss this year is that the idea that if you can't top, other people should have your dots starts to really bite me. I need to, it's benefited me so far, and so I've been okay with it, but here I need to be fighting that concept in order to try and survive to the end of the game. Fall 1912, I'm able to effectively work with England. We coordinate our moves. I believe, unfortunately, this is a year too late, and I end up with 3 dots and only 2 units to hold it, which is an extremely bad outcome. Spring 1913. The end is quite near now. My win is that I start actually pleading. I have no shame. My loss is that pleading has no effect. In the fall of 1913, my win is that I start dragging turns to try and secure a draw spot. My loss is that dragging turns has no effect. Spring 1914, please don't eliminate me. The loss is no effect. Fall 1914, I'm the last eliminated and actually had quite a fun game, but the loss is all of my centers. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again someday soon.